In the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic Ocean, where the wind howls like a perpetual warning and the ice cracks under the weight of shifting geopolitics, a new power dynamic has emerged. Russia, with its fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers slicing through the polar ice like knives through silk, has asserted a dominance that leaves NATO scrambling in the cold. Ships that can crush through meters of frozen sea, submarines lurking beneath the surface, and military bases dotting the remote archipelagos, these are the tools of a nation that has turned the North into its fortress. As climate change melts the barriers that once isolated this region, Russia's grip tightens, rendering traditional alliances vulnerable and exposing the fragility of Western defenses. This is the story of how the Arctic, long a peripheral theater, has become the frontline of a silent confrontation, where the balance of power tilts northward, and NATO finds itself outmaneuvered in the chill. To grasp the significance of Russia's Arctic ascendancy, we must first delve into the region's historical and strategic importance, assuming no prior familiarity with its complexities. The Arctic Circle encompasses the northernmost parts of 8 countries: Russia, the United States, Canada, Norway, Denmark via Greenland, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. It is a land of extremes: endless daylight in summer, perpetual night in winter, and vast resources buried beneath ice and permafrost. Oil, natural gas, rare earth minerals, and fisheries abound, potentially worth trillions of dollars. But access has always been limited by sea ice, which covers much of the ocean for most of the year. During the Cold War, the Arctic was a tense arena for superpower rivalry. The Soviet Union maintained a formidable northern fleet based in Murmansk on the Kola Peninsula, home to nuclear submarines capable of launching intercontinental ballistic missiles. These vessels patrolled under the ice, hidden from detection, providing a second strike capability in the event of nuclear war. The United States countered with its own submarines and alliances through NATO, established in 1949 as a collective defense pact among North Atlantic nations. NATO's Article 5 stipulates that an attack on one member is an attack on all, a principle designed to deter aggression. In the Arctic, this meant monitoring Soviet movements through sonar arrays and patrols, but the region's harsh conditions limited large-scale operations. With the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, Arctic tensions eased. Russia economically weakened, reduced its military footprint, while climate change began to alter the landscape. Rising global temperatures caused sea ice to retreat, opening new shipping routes like the Northern Sea Route (NSR) along Russia's northern coast. This path, shorter than traditional routes through the Suez or Panama canals, promised faster transit for goods between Europe and Asia. Russia saw opportunity. By controlling the NSR, it could charge transit fees, export its Arctic resources more efficiently, and project power. In 2007, a Russian submarine planted a flag on the seabed at the North Pole, symbolizing its claims under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea (UNCLOS), which allows nations to extend territorial rights based on continental shelf extensions. Financially, this was crucial. Russia's economy relies heavily on energy exports. Oil and gas account for about 40% of its federal budget. The Arctic holds an estimated 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas. Projects like Yamal LNG, developed in partnership with foreign firms before sanctions, underscored this potential. Politically, President Vladimir Putin's administration framed the Arctic as a national priority, issuing strategies in 2008 and 2020 to develop infrastructure, boost population, and enhance security. Icebreakers became central. These specialized ships, powered by nuclear reactors for endurance, can break through thick ice, enabling year-round navigation. NATO, meanwhile, focused elsewhere: counterterrorism in the Middle East, enlargement in Eastern Europe. The alliance expanded to include former Soviet states like the Baltic nations in 2004, heightening Moscow's suspicions, but Arctic-specific planning lagged. The United States, with Alaska as its northern outpost, maintained Thule Air Base in Greenland for missile warning but invested minimally in ice-capable vessels. Canada patrolled sporadically, Norway hosted exercises, but no unified NATO Arctic strategy existed. This complacency stemmed from assumptions. The Arctic was too remote, too harsh, and climate models predicted ice-free summers soon, reducing the need for specialized fleets. The turning point came in 2014 with Russia's annexation of Crimea and intervention in eastern Ukraine. Western sanctions targeted Russia's energy sector, prompting Moscow to accelerate Arctic development as an alternative revenge. Source: by 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Arctic strategic value skyrocketed. Sanctions severed Russia from Western markets, redirecting exports to Asia via the NSR. Transit volumes surged from 4 million tons in 2014 to over 36 million in 2023, mostly hydrocarbons. To protect this lifeline, Russia militarized the region step by step. Let us trace this escalation chronologically, beginning with infrastructure buildup. In the early 2010s, Russia reactivated Soviet-era bases on remote islands like Franz Josef Land and the New Siberian Islands. These outposts, equipped with airfields, radar, and anti-aircraft systems, formed a defensive arc. By 2017, the Northern Fleet had been upgraded to a joint strategic command, integrating Army, Navy, Air Force, and air defense units. New vessels joined: the Ivan Papanin-class patrol ships, ice-strengthened for combat in frozen waters, launched in 2019. These could escort convoys, conduct search and rescue, and engage threats. The invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 accelerated these efforts. As NATO rallied behind Ukraine with arms and sanctions, Russia perceived encirclement. In March 2022, it conducted Arctic exercises involving submarines surfacing through ice and missile launches. By summer, the NSR saw record traffic, but Western navies increased patrols. Norway, a NATO member bordering Russia, reported heightened submarine activity near its coast. In response, Russia deployed hypersonic Zircon missiles, capable of Mach 9 speeds and evading defenses, to its Northern Fleet submarines. 2023 marked a pivotal year. Russia commissioned the Yakutia, a Borge-class nuclear submarine, adding to its fleet of 16 such vessels in the Arctic. These subs carry Bulava missiles with multiple warheads, each yielding up to 150 kilotons, 10 times Hiroshima's bomb. Explained simply, a nuclear submarine is a stealthy underwater platform that can launch missiles from hidden positions, deterring attacks by ensuring retaliation. Russia's fleet, based in the Barents Sea, can target Europe or North America in minutes. That year, NATO held its largest Arctic exercise, Arctic Dolphin, but participants noted capability gaps: few icebreakers, limited cold-weather drones. By 2024, Russia's dominance crystallized. The NSR handled 40 million tons, with China as a key partner. Joint ventures in LNG and patrols signaled a budding alliance. Russia tested new weapons: the Poseidon nuclear torpedo, an unmanned underwater vehicle with a 100-megaton warhead designed to create radioactive tsunamis. In October 2024, Norway's defense minister warned of Russia massing forces on the Kola Peninsula, stockpiling warheads and testing systems for war with NATO. This included reactivating Cold War bases and deploying S-400 air defenses. Entering 2025, the buildup intensified. In January, Russia launched the Chukotka, another Borge sub, confirming development of fifth-generation strategic submarines, stealthier with advanced AI for autonomous operations. By spring, a report from the Ted Stevens Center assessed Russian intentions: militarization to secure resources amid climate-induced access. Sea ice hit record lows in March 2025, opening routes but heightening competition. Russia deployed unmanned systems: kamikaze sea drones tested in Baltic exercises, adaptable to Arctic waters. Summer 2025 saw joint Russia-China drills, with Chinese icebreakers shadowing Russian convoys. NATO responded with Finland and Sweden's accession expanding its northern flank. But a SEPA study in December 2025 highlighted drone disparities: Russia's fleet expected to grow by an order of magnitude, with over 1.5 million units produced annually, aided by China and Iran. NATO's drones, designed for temperate climates, falter in Arctic extremes: batteries drain in cold, sensors ice over. Autumn brought deployment milestones. In October, Russia stationed advanced missiles on Novaya Zemlya, capable of striking European targets. November exercises involved the entire Northern Fleet shadowing NATO ships near Svalbard, a Norwegian archipelago demilitarized by treaty but contested. By December 2025, Russia deployed all 8 nuclear icebreakers simultaneously, a historic first, to maintain NSR lanes amid early freezes. These vessels, like the Arctica class, displace 33,000 tons and break 3-meter ice, far surpassing NATO's capabilities. Hidden factors underpin this dominance, often overlooked in public discourse. Economically, sanctions backfired. Russia's shadow fleet of unregistered tankers, including one linking Arctic oil to Venezuela in December 2025, evades restrictions. Politically, Putin's regime uses the Arctic to bolster nationalism. State media portrays it as reclaiming historical territory, distracting from Ukraine losses. Alliances matter. China's Polar Silk Road invests in Russian infrastructure, providing technology and markets. Less discussed: environmental impacts. Russia's rapid development risks spills and methane releases, accelerating warming, yet it blocks international oversight. Intelligence gaps persist. Western reports whisper of hybrid tactics: cable cuts, GPS jamming in NATO territories, airspace violations. Russia's re-engagement with Arctic Council working groups in 2024 masked military planning. Internal dynamics: corruption in shipbuilding delays some projects, but state subsidies prioritize the fleet over civilian needs. Globally, Russia's Arctic grip reshapes the world order. The NSR challenges traditional trade routes. A tanker from Shanghai to Rotterdam saves 40% time via the Arctic versus Suez, but dominance means control. Russia mandates pilotage and fees, potentially weaponizing access. Resource extraction intensifies competition. With 90 billion barrels of oil equivalent, conflicts over claims could erupt. UNCLOS disputes linger. Russia's extended shelf claim overlaps with Denmark's and Canada's. For NATO, implications are dire. Without a formal Arctic strategy, the alliance relies on ad hoc measures. The US, with one functional icebreaker, another under construction, contracts out to allies like Finland. Europe's energy security suffers as Russian gas pivots east, prices rise. Broader, a multipolar world emerges. China's presence signals a shift from US hegemony, joint patrols erode Western influence. Climate change amplifies risks. Melting permafrost destabilizes bases, rising seas threaten infrastructure. Security dilemmas mount. NATO's northern expansion provokes Russia, risking escalation. Hybrid threats, disinformation on Svalbard, where Russia maintains settlements, erode trust. Economically, deindustrialization looms for Arctic-adjacent nations if roots favor Russia-China. For the planet, militarization hinders cooperation on shared challenges like pollution and biodiversity loss. In thoughtful conclusion, Russia's new Arctic fleet has not rendered NATO entirely powerless, but it has achieved a form of northern dominance that demands recalibration. The icebreakers, submarines, and bases form a web of control, securing economic lifelines while projecting military might. This is no accident of geography, but a deliberate strategy born of necessity and ambition. NATO, forged in a different era, must adapt, develop ice-capable assets, unify strategies, invest in drones and surveillance. Yet confrontation is not inevitable. Dialogue through forums like the Arctic Council could mitigate risks, focusing on shared interests like search and rescue and environmental protection. The Arctic teaches humility, the ice yields to no ideology, melting under human folly. Russia's ascendancy warns against complacency, urging balanced policies that blend deterrence with diplomacy. As the polar night descends in December 2025, with Russian ships carving paths through the freeze, the world watches. Will this frozen frontier spark conflict or foster a new equilibrium? The answer lies not in fleets alone, but in the wisdom of those who command them. In the end, dominance is fleeting, the ice reforms, and the cycle begins anew. As the polar night envelops the Arctic in December 2025, with temperatures plunging far below freezing and the sea ice reaching its seasonal extent at near-record lows, Russia's position in the region appears more entrenched than ever. The nation's fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers has operated at full capacity this winter, ensuring uninterrupted navigation along the northern sea route even as early freezes tested the limits of lesser vessels. Submarines of the Northern Fleet continue extended patrols beneath the thinning ice, while new combat icebreakers like the Ivan Papanin and Nikolai Zubov bolster escort capabilities. NATO allies, despite increased exercises and rhetorical commitments, confront persistent gaps in ice-capable assets and unified strategy. Russia's advantages, numerical superiority in specialized ships, integrated military-civilian infrastructure, and deepening partnerships, have not rendered the alliance powerless, but they have shifted the balance toward a form of northern dominance that demands sustained Western adaptation. To place this reality in context on this Christmas Eve 2025, consider the tangible developments of the past year. Russia's nuclear icebreaker fleet reached a historic milestone in December when all 8 operational vessels, including the Arctica-class giants, were deployed simultaneously to maintain shipping lanes to critical energy terminals. This full mobilization supported year-round exports from projects like Yamal LNG and the Arctic Gate, underscoring the dual-use nature of these assets, commercial enablers that also secure military logistics. The Stalingrad, the latest Project 22,220 icebreaker, joined the fleet earlier in the year, with keel-laying ceremonies signaling continued expansion. Combat icebreakers advanced too. The Ivan Papanin entered service in September, armed and ice-strengthened for Patro L duties in the Northern Fleet. Submarine modernization proceeded apace. The Nyaz Pozharsky, a Borye-class ballistic missile submarine, joined the Northern Fleet in June, enhancing Russia's sea-based nuclear deterrent. Reports indicate ongoing work on fifth-generation platforms with improved stealth. In October, President Putin announced a successful test of the Poseidon nuclear-powered torpedo, activating its reactor mid-mission, a step toward operational status for this autonomous weapon designed for extreme-range strikes. The Northern Sea route saw robust activity despite challenging ice. Total cargo volume for 2024 reached 37.9 million tons, with transit voyages in 2025 numbering 103 and carrying approximately 3.2 million tons, stable growth amid tougher conditions. Container traffic surged, with Chinese operators completing a record 14 voyages. Projections for overall NSR cargo in 2025 anticipate around 45-50 million tons, driven by energy exports redirected eastward. NATO's response has been active but constrained. Finland and Sweden's full integration expanded the alliance's northern footprint, enabling exercises like Joint Viking in March, involving 10,000 troops in Norway, and Arctic Light in September, led by Denmark and Greenland with multinational participation. Formidable Shield in May focused on air and missile defense off northern Norway. A new combined air operations center in Bodo, Norway, opened in October to coordinate across the high north. The ice pact between the United States, Canada, and Finland advanced plans for joint icebreaker production, aiming to scale capacity, though deliveries remain years away. The U.S. operates limited icebreakers, Canada plans new builds, but combined NATO assets lag far behind Russia's 40-plus specialized vessels. Hidden factors shape this landscape. Russia-China cooperation deepened pragmatically, joint consultations on NSR development, Chinese investment in LNG projects, and occasional drills, though mutual distrust persists over governance and militarization. Sanctions have pushed Russia toward Asian markets, but shadow fleets and indirect routes maintain some European ties. Environmental changes, record low sea ice maximum in March 2025 and persistent lows through winter open routes but heighten risks of spills and escalation. Globally, Russia's Arctic posture influences trade, energy, and security. The NSR offers time savings for Asia-Europe shipping, yet mandatory Russian oversight raises sovereignty concerns. Resource competition intensifies with overlapping claims under review. NATO's northern members coordinate more closely, but broader alliance priorities, Ukraine's support, southern flank stability, dilute Arctic focus. Emerging hybrid threats like infrastructure vulnerabilities underscore the need for resilience. In conclusion, as families gather in warmth across the northern latitudes this Christmas Eve 2025, the Arctic strategic reality endures, transformed by climate and geopolitics, yet resilient in its challenges. Russia's fleet and infrastructure confer significant advantages, securing economic lifelines and military projection without outright confrontation. NATO has not been rendered powerless. Enhanced presence, exercises, and partnerships demonstrate resolve, but achieving parity requires sustained investment in capabilities from icebreakers to surveillance. The deeper lesson is interdependence. The Arctic's shared environment demands cooperation on safety, science, and sustainability, even amid rivalry. Dominance here is not absolute. Ice reforms, routes shift, alliances evolve. Wisdom lies in balancing deterrence with dialogue, ambition with restraint. As the aurora dances faintly over frozen seas, the region offers not inevitable conflict but opportunity for prudent statesmanship to ensure the North remains a domain of stability in an uncertain world. The story of Arctic power continues, measured not in conquest but in the foresight to navigate its unforgiving waters. As the long polar night reaches its depth on this Christmas Eve of 2025, the Arctic Ocean lies under a veil of darkness and thickening ice, yet the strategic currents beneath the surface run stronger than ever. Russia's nuclear-powered icebreaker fleet has achieved an unprecedented feat this winter. For the first time in history, all 8 operational vessels are deployed simultaneously, carving paths through the frozen waters to sustain vital energy exports. These ships, the 4 modern Project 22,220 vessels, Arctica, Sibir, Ural, and Yakutia, alongside the older but steadfast Yaml, 50-let Pobedi, and the shallow draft Tamer and Vagech, are scattered across key choke points like the Gulf of Ob and the Yenisei Gulf, ensuring that liquefied natural gas and oil cargoes continue to flow toward Asian markets despite the intensifying cold. This full mobilization underscores the dual-purpose nature of Russia's Arctic assets, commercial lifelines that double as instruments of national resilience and projection. Sea ice conditions this December have been unusually variable, with extent remaining among the lowest on record for the month, reflecting the ongoing transformation driven by climate warming. While the winter maximum earlier in the year set a record low, the current freeze-up has been uneven, allowing extended navigation windows in some sectors but demanding constant icebreaker support in others. The Northern Sea Route, Russia's prized maritime artery, concluded its 2025 navigation season with robust figures. 103 transit voyages carrying an estimated 3.2 million tons of cargo, predominantly eastbound oil, gas, and containers. Overall cargo volume along the route approached 38 million tons for the year, with projections for a 20% increase in 2026 as new terminals and infrastructure come online. Chinese operators played a prominent role, completing a record 14 container voyages, signaling deepening practical ties even as broader geopolitical frictions persist. NATO's response throughout 2025 has been marked by heightened activity and institutional adaptation. The alliance's northern flank, strengthened by the full integration of Finland and Sweden, saw a series of major exercises designed to enhance cold weather interoperability. Joint Viking in March brought together 10,000 troops in northern Norway for collective defense rehearsals. Arctic Light in September, led by Denmark and Greenland, involved multinational air, land, sea, and civil assets in search and rescue and crisis response drills. The inauguration of a new combined air operations center in Bodo, Norway, in October further bolstered coordination across the high North, Baltic, and North Atlantic. Initiatives like the Ice Pact among the United States, Canada, and Finland advanced plans for joint icebreaker production, though tangible assets remain years from delivery. These steps reflect a growing recognition that the Arctic is no longer peripheral but integral to Euro-Atlantic security. Less visible but equally significant are the evolving dynamics between Russia and China. Cooperation deepened in pragmatic areas, joint consultations on route development, Chinese investment in LNG projects, and increased container traffic. Yet underlying divergences remain. Russia's emphasis on unilateral control contrasts with China's preference for multilateral frameworks. Military security ties showed incremental progress, including Coast Guard patrols, but mutual suspicions over governance and long-term intentions temper enthusiasm for deeper integration. In ports from Murmansk to Sabetta, crews work through the holidays, guiding tankers laden with Arctic resources. In NATO command centers from Bodo to Ramstein, planners refine scenarios for an environment where access is expanding but risks are multiplying. Indigenous communities along the coasts observe changes in ice patterns that affect traditional hunting and travel. Scientists note the persistent decline in multi-year ice, accelerating vulnerability to storms and erosion. The global implications extend far beyond the polar circle. Reliable Arctic shipping influences energy markets, with Russian exports finding steady demand in Asia amid redirected trade flows. Competition over resources and routes shapes alliances as nations balance economic opportunity with security concerns. Environmental consequences, potential spills, methane releases, disrupted ecosystems remind us that human activity in this fragile domain carries planetary costs. As we reflect on this Christmas Eve 2025, Russia's Arctic fleet and infrastructure confer undeniable operational advantages, securing economic interests and enabling sustained presence in challenging conditions. NATO has demonstrated resolve through expansion, exercises, and planning, narrowing gaps in awareness and readiness. Neither side holds absolute dominance. The region remains a shared space governed by international law, natural forces, and human decisions. A thoughtful conclusion endures. The Arctic's future hinges on equilibrium. Russia's achievements in icebreaking and route management highlight the rewards of long-term investment, yet they also expose dependencies on finite resources and volatile partnerships. NATO's adaptations affirm collective strength, but sustained commitment is required to match specialized capabilities. Dialogue on practical issues, safety, science, sustainable development offers pathways to mitigate risks, even amid rivalry. In the quiet of the polar night, with icebreakers forging ahead and auroras flickering overhead, the region embodies both peril and possibility. Dominance here is transient, shaped by climate shifts no fleet can fully command. True security lies in foresight, balancing ambition with responsibility, deterrence with cooperation, and power with restraint. As the ice continues its ancient rhythm of freeze and thaw, the choices made today will determine whether the North owns a frontier of confrontation or a model of prudent stewardship for generations to come. The narrative of Arctic power persists, guided not solely by steel hulls or strategic plans, but by the wisdom to navigate uncertainty with clarity and care. As the year 2025 draws to a close on this Christmas Eve, with the Arctic locked in its deepest winter freeze and sea ice extent lingering at levels among the lowest recorded for December, Russia's strategic posture in the region stands as a testament to calculated investment amid global upheaval. The unprecedented simultaneous deployment of all 8 nuclear-powered icebreakers, Arktika, Sibir, Ural, Yakutia, Yamal, 50 Letpobody, Taymyr, and Vaygech, has ensured that critical export corridors in the Gulf of Ob and Yenisei Gulf remain operational, facilitating the movement of liquefied natural gas and oil despite early and thick ice formations. This full mobilization, confirmed through vessel tracking and official statements, highlights the indispensable role of these vessels in sustaining Russia's Arctic energy projects, even as shortages of high ice-class tankers and carriers constrain full potential. The Northern Sea Route concluded its 2025 navigation season with 103 transit voyages transporting approximately 3.2 million tons of cargo, a stable performance amid challenging ice conditions that shortened the open water period. Overall cargo volumes along the route approached 38 million tons for the year, with hydrocarbons dominating and container traffic achieving record levels, including 14 voyages by Chinese operators. Projections for 2026 anticipate growth toward 45 to 50 million tons, underpinned by eastward redirection of exports and partnerships that prioritize practical logistics over broader geopolitical alignments. On the military front, developments within the Northern Fleet reflect continuity and modernization. The Borye-class submarine Nyaz Pozharsky joined the fleet earlier in the year, augmenting sea-based deterrence, while the combat icebreaker Ivan Papanin completed Arctic trials and entered service, enhancing patrol capabilities from Novaya Zemlya to the Bering Strait. These additions, alongside ongoing work on subsequent vessels, underscore a focus on dual-use assets that secure both commercial routes and strategic interests. NATO's activities in 2025 demonstrated increased cohesion across its expanded northern membership. Exercises such as Joint Viking in March, involving 10,000 troops in northern Norway, and Arctic Light in September, led by Denmark and Greenland with multinational contributions, tested interoperability in extreme conditions. The inauguration of a combined air operations center in Bodo further integrated air domain awareness across the High North, Baltic, and North Atlantic. Trilateral efforts under the Ice Pact progressed, with agreements facilitating knowledge exchange and future production of ice-capable vessels, though deliveries remain on longer timelines. Cooperation between Russia and China advanced incrementally in operational domains, including container shipping and consultations on route development, yet foundational divergences persist regarding governance, multilateralism, and long-term intentions. Practical ties support mutual economic needs, but strategic autonomy limits deeper integration. Environmental realities frame these human endeavors. Sea ice reached a record low winter maximum in March 2025, with persistent anomalies through the year, accelerating access while amplifying risks such as infrastructure vulnerability and ecological disruption. Indigenous observations and scientific monitoring alike note shifts in patterns that affect traditional livelihoods and operational planning. Globally, the Arctic's evolving dynamics influence trade corridors, resource competition, and security architectures. Russia's operational advantages in icebreaking and presence enable sustained economic activity, while NATO's adaptations enhance collective readiness without closing capability gaps overnight. In thoughtful conclusion, as lights gleam across northern communities this Christmas Eve 2025, whether in Murmansk ports, Finnish shipyards, or Alaskan outposts, the Arctic embodies a domain of enduring challenge and measured progress. Russia's fleet confers practical dominance in navigation and projection, yet strains from sanctions, ice variability, and tanker shortages reveal limits. NATO's resolve, fortified by new members and partnerships, narrows asymmetries through training and planning, affirming deterrence without provocation. The region's future rests on prudent navigation of shared vulnerabilities. Climate-driven change no power can fully command, economic interdependencies that transcend rivalry, and environmental imperatives demanding stewardship. Dominance proves ephemeral against nature's rhythms. Equilibrium emerges from restraint, dialogue on practical matters like safety and science, and recognition that He North stability serves all who border its frozen expanse. As icebreakers press onward and exercises conclude, the choices ahead, forged in foresight rather than force, will shape whether this vast frontier fosters cooperation or contention in the years to follow. The Arctic narrative endures, a chronicle of adaptation in an unforgiving yet transformative landscape.